Earlier this week, I met with a business who was offering to support policing by providing volunteers to train businesses and schools on cyber threats and digital harm. Now, some of you will be thinking, as we've heard already, why wouldn't you? And others will be thinking, what's the catch? It's how policing has been conditioned when it comes to some partnership arrangements in recent years. I'm very much in the why wouldn't you camp, and so we started to talk about prospective timelines. And it was only after that I'd said it that I realised that maybe too I had been conditioned to some of the environments that we are working in. Those timelines we talked about were starting in mid to late next year. And that was entirely rightly down to some key considerations like vetting, which is so incredibly important. But we need to find ways of breaking down some of the challenges that this report quite rightly identifies if we are going to make people feel safer, that we are going to cut crime, support victims, build trust, by breaking down the barriers to more public and private partnership. Some of those concerns as well, you may have heard, well, you'll have to go through procurement, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. And some of the issues around who is going to share data and who has permission to share what. There are many analogies you could use to describe this moment in policing. On the edge of a precipice, at a fork in the road, rearranging the deck chairs. But reports like this, setting a simple and clear policy right through a complicated policing landscape, are now going to be more crucial than ever. Forced mergers are being presented as a fait accompli. Policing governance has been torn up, not just 4 weeks ago, but what is also being mooted in the press only this morning does not seem compatible with what was even suggested 4 weeks ago, those structures being proposed. That uncertainty is not welcome, and the basic homework questions have not been answered, because bigger has not always meant better. In fact, as we heard earlier on, the breakup of the Metropolitan Police has been proposed in other reports. And it will reduce access to schemes like those we have seen in this report, because often they start with local innovation. And you only need to have a look at that same Angelini Part 2 report for living examples of how central coordination isn't working. It does feel a little bit like all of the aspects of the budget being flown in advance. Public-private partnerships need to be a key plank of the reform agenda going forward. PCCs have shown this time and time again. The Pegasus project, the national retail theft operation, was brought together by a PCC in conjunction with businesses and policing. Prisoners Building Homes, a PCC-led initiative, which last night incidentally won the Civil Service Awards for Programme of the Year. Not just a policing partnership, but also one that looked at the wider space that we all need to be in around rehabilitation and justice and the wider criminal justice sector. In my own area, we've heard already today about the partnership with private security providers. Only myself this summer funding extra work by security firms in key hotspot locations to provide extra reassurance to the local community in conjunction with Canterbury City Council. And some of the other schemes that we funded locally include some of those organisations that you've seen up there, such as NAVSIS and the Rural Task Force in Kent, who have been doing proactive work on agricultural theft and trying to stop the removal of stolen plant through Dover. There's a lot to say for the work between police and crime commissioners and business, so much for failed experiments. Private industry has also been very proactive in this space, supporting victims, including one law firm who helped an elderly victim reclaim over £520,000 following a crypto scam. Those opening slides that we've seen today outlining a number of substantial partnerships which are making a difference to our local communities. And our communities are crying out for this support. And it shows how working together we can address some of those issues which communities have concerns about, which may not be the top of the Chief Constable's control strategy. And we should not be afraid of private partnerships when they will cut crime, support victims and build trust. They provide capacity and capability that sometimes policing can only dream about. And one of those examples, Lord Harris mentioned earlier on around procurement. I bear the scars of 6 years of police commercial activity, having been the founding chair of Blue Light Commercial, the company set up by police and crime commissioners with the Home Office and policing in order to do those very things that we needed to do to streamline procurement processes, be better customers and provide our forces with better skills when it comes to commercial activity, leading the way in standardising our fleet and saving money on energy, and equipping our officers with the skills they need to better manage contracts, to cut the price of contingent labour and staffing vacancies. We could not possibly hope to match some of the skills which are available to us in the private sector, which is why now this is more important than ever, because things could get very murky. Policing is being reorganised, policing governance is being torn up, local councils are being reorganised, NHS England is being scrapped, integrated care boards are being cut. This is not a good time for many of these organisations, but it is a good advert for this report and the recommendation being made for us today so that we can streamline all of these things and bring them together. Public-private partnership is needed now more than ever. Police ICT needs to be more responsive. How many times have software providers gone to police forces and it's been put right down to the bottom of police ICT priorities? There are a number of companies now who are crying out to work with policing in the space of retail crime. However, the forces have already chose the one of the 4 platforms that they're already going to use and on board, not making space for the other 3 and missing out on thousands and thousands of pieces of data around highly prolific shoplifters and offenders in our local communities. And this is an opportunity as well for us to consider some of the extra elements around policing that could really provide some mutual benefit. I've always been a passionate advocate of our special constabulary and volunteering. The skills which our special constables bring to policing can be unrivalled. We have people working across all sectors providing a real benefit. And if chief constables could just take the shackles off and let these special constables train up in other areas, let them train as detectives, let them train as investigators, let them have access to other training schemes, we could replicate and increase our investigative capacity using the skills which are there. We have seen examples of this in Kent, where we have worked with the security industry to train some of their members up as volunteer PCSOs, giving us extra capacity at key points. And finally, the one question that we do need to consider, as has been suggested here, is around ethics. Ethics and integrity are really important to policing. They're very important to me. And with the advent of AI, robotic process automation, and data sharing, facial recognition, so many different projects which at the moment touch on the key Peelian principles of policing by consent, that we need to make sure that everything we do still is framed through that approach of ethics. It's not just about profit versus and private versus public. Actually, there are deeper questions that we need to answer, and avoiding the risk of single large organisations being able to effectively take over whole sectors as they do so. So I welcome this report and I welcome the central recommendation of it. It's needed now more than ever because we need to actually grasp this opportunity to bring the public and the private sectors better together, as we have seen so many excellent examples of today. I thank the Police Foundation for producing this report and the Art Loss Register for sponsoring it. I will be taking this away to my colleagues to make sure that they are aware of its recommendations and be using the next 2 years to hopefully help drive that recommendation home. Thank you.